All right, so the format of today's session is I'll cover some very quick fire general information about engineering at UBC, at UBC's Okanagan campus specifically. Then we will hopefully have a lot of time for Q&A as well. So if you do have any questions, just know that we will have a designated time for Q&A. And if for whatever reason we don't get a chance to answer your question in the session, myself and my colleague Helena, who's here in this session with me today in the chat, she's just introduced herself in the chat. She will be in the admissions booth with me after our presentation. So you'll definitely have a chance to connect with someone even if you don't get a chance to ask your question here, or if you feel like you'd rather have more of a one-on-one conversation, we'll be able to do that in the admissions booth. All right, now with all that preamble, we'll go ahead and actually get started here. So welcome to tonight's session. My name is Lauren Schroeder. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am joining tonight's presentation on the unceded territory of the Silks Okanagan Nation territory and their peoples. So this is the same unceded territory that UBC's Okanagan campus does sit on. And so I would like to acknowledge that that's where I'm joining from tonight, and that they are the traditional owners and caretakers of the lands where I'm joining from, and also to encourage you to take a moment to find out who the traditional owners and caretakers are of the lands that you're joining this session from tonight as well. All right, so as I mentioned before, Helena is in the chat. She's going to be assisting me in the chat function and also in the admissions booth with me a little bit later. So there's two of us here from UBC tonight. But my job as my position at UBC is that I work as a student recruiter advisor at the Okanagan campus specifically. So my job involves basically answering anything and everything that you have questions about relating to applying to UBC or learning about the program. And I specifically work with the Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Applied Science, and the School of Engineering in order to assist applied sciences applicants very specifically. So if you do have questions about engineering in general or applying to the engineering program, or just even if you want to talk about, not necessarily tonight, we might not have time to get into this, but if after today you want to talk about any of the similarities or differences between the Okanagan program and the Vancouver program, I can definitely answer those questions for you as well. But tonight we're focused entirely on the Okanagan program. All right. So why engineering at UBC? You probably already came from another session, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You've probably joined tonight's session because you want to learn more about the process of applying, so you don't need to hear more information from me, at least, about why engineering at UBC. But just as a quick recap, in case you didn't join the earlier session about why engineering at UBC Okanagan, we are ranked consistently within the top 3 programs in Canada, as well as a whole institution. We're consistently ranked within the top 3 nationally. And as an institution, we're also ranked within the top 40 globally. So there's some great rankings that we're super proud of, but of course there's more to your experience at UBC than strictly academics. So there's tons of opportunities to actually apply your learning in real world settings. The Okanagan program in particular has great design, lots of design elements and collaboration involved in the curriculum. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in just a second. But there's great opportunities to actually start putting your learning, your theory into action throughout your experiences in the classroom and outside the classroom at UBC, as well as great opportunities for international experiences as well. Now, I know that might sound a little bit far-fetched at the moment with everything with COVID-19, but keep in mind that many of the international experiences that you might be considering participating in wouldn't take place until later in your studies anyway, so you've got a bit of time to, hopefully things will calm down and we'll be able to get back to normal in the near future, but all those updates are just sort of coming as those updates become available. But we're hoping, of course, that by the time you'd actually be considering participating in these, that they will look the same as they have previously. Now, a little bit of a quick recap as well about the program sort of structure at UBC's Okanagan campus. Now, again, you've covered a lot of this information in the previous session, so I am going to go through this quite quickly. But if you do have questions, of course, I'll be able to, myself or Helena will be able to answer those questions for you. Now, the engineering program at Okanagan has about 300 students in each year's cohort, so it is quite a small student community, which is fantastic. It means that you're going to get to know your peers really well. You're going to get to know your faculty really well. The Okanagan experience is certainly one that is a very tight-knit community, a very supportive community. I absolutely love working with the faculty in the School of Engineering at the Okanagan campus. There's so much enthusiasm from the faculty. There's so much enthusiasm from the staff and the students that it really just, it's such a fun community to get to work with at UBC Okanagan for sure. So I really enjoy working with them. I think that spirit will, as you're talking to the students, as you're asking your questions about their experiences, I'm sure you'll get that similar vibe from the way they speak about their community and how much they enjoy studying in this program. So there's 2 foundational years that cover a lot of different things, but essentially it serves as a foundation so that when you do declare your specialization, one of those 4 specializations, that you feel like you've had a little bit of a taster of some different areas of engineering and you're making a really informed decision. Now at UBC Okanagan specifically, you can choose between a 4-year timetable and a 5-year timetable, which is awesome because it means that you have the option to reduce your course load a little bit in order to complete your course in 5 years versus 4 years. If you would like to have a bit more time to partake in maybe part-time work or extracurriculars on campus, it just frees up a little bit more time, as you might be getting the vibe that this program is definitely fantastic, but it is a rigorous program. And so some students will opt to extend their studies by that 1 year, which is an option specifically to the Okanagan program in order to have a little bit more time for other things throughout their 5 years. Now, these are your specializations: civil and electrical, and mechanical and manufacturing engineering. Again, we probably covered these in the previous session, so I'll go through these quite quickly, but it's always good to have a little bit of a refresh as well. And just a quick summary about the Okanagan campus, in case you're not as familiar with this particular campus community. Do know that we are offering guided online campus tours. So I know there's guided like lab tours and things that are happening in tonight's event, but in case you want to actually get to know some of the other facilities that are available on campus, most days of the week, you can sign up for, and at different times of day as well, because you'll all have very different schedules at this time or be joining us from different time zones. You can sign up for one of those guided online campus tours, and they're with a current student. So it's a great way to be able to actually ask some questions to a current student and get to know a little bit more about the facilities in the campus community from their perspective. So do know you can just sign up for one of those on our website. So the student population, as this is the whole community, not just the engineering program, just under 10,000 students. We have a huge range of students, diverse range of students from all over Canada, all over the province of BC, but also all over the world. As you'll see, there's 97 different countries represented in our student population. And what's really neat about the Okanagan campus as well, if anyone is joining us tonight and considering the possibility of moving away from home, do know that at the Okanagan campus, only about 25% of our student population is actually from the local Okanagan region. So about 75% of our student community is actually from all over Canada, all over the world, and are also considering moving away or do live away from home as part of their university experience with UBC. So it's kind of nice. I know I moved quite far away from home when I went to university, and I really liked being in an environment at my campus where I felt like there were other people trying to make those new connections, making new friendships, creating that home away from home. And I do feel like that's a special attribute of the Okanagan campus as well. And just a friendly reminder, I know that this would have been mentioned in the previous session, but I want to make sure that we've got lots of time for admissions information and questions here. But there are tremendous amounts of opportunity to get to participate in research, in co-op positions. Actually, that co-op is one link I did not provide in that list, a very long list of links that I provided at the beginning. But co-op actually has its own section of the UBC website, and it's, co-op, and specifically for engineering students, has its own section of the UBC website. So if you are keen to learn a little bit more about kind of how that's structured or anything like that, you can definitely, if you just Google UBC Engineering Co-op, it will come up, but I'll try and make sure that I remember to pop that link in the chat before we're done as well. And then of course, clubs, international experiences, design team, the picture that's on this particular slide here is of the Great Northern Concrete Toboggan Race, which is literally racing a concrete toboggan, and it's quite a fun competition that our students really enjoy being a part of, and we've even hosted that event in the past as well. All right, so jumping into the nitty-gritty of some of the admissions information here. And I will just do a friendly reminder that, of course, I'm going to go through lots of information tonight, but if you find that you actually start an application, or maybe you just weren't sure if you remembered some information correctly and you just want to double check some stuff with me, Absolutely, definitely. I encourage you to reach out to me after tonight, and I'm more than happy to assist to answer any other questions you think of, clarify anything. That's my job. I'm here to help. So do know that you can definitely reach out to me directly, and my contact details will be in the last slide before we finish today. All right. So applying to UBC is really as easy as 1, 2, 3, as you can see here in this handy slide. So the first step that you're going to need to do is choosing your degree and your campus. Now, if you're really set on engineering, then you might already have established that you're going to apply to the Bachelor of Applied Science at the Okanagan campus. But there are actually 2 program choices that you can make within your application. So you get a first choice and a second choice program. Now, you want to think through which program you're actually putting as your first choice versus your second choice quite carefully, because you'll be considered for your first choice program first and foremost. So that's really what you want to make sure you pick your first choice very carefully, because that's what we're going to look at. And only if you're unsuccessful with that application would you be considered for your second choice program. Now, many students that I talk to who are interested in the Applied Sciences program, they say to me, you know, I'm open to both campuses. I want to put Okanagan as my first choice, and I'd like to put Vancouver as my second choice for the Applied Sciences program. You can definitely do that. And in fact, if you're open to both campuses, I encourage you to consider putting one as your first choice, one as your second choice, but you are going to just need to think through very carefully, which one do you want as your first choice? Which one do you want as your second choice, because of the way that evaluation takes place. So choosing your degree and campus is definitely an important first step, but it also goes in combination with the next step there, step number 2, which is reviewing the requirements. So you want to make sure that if you only get 2 program options that you get to apply for, which is, and I'll just mention, is all within one application. So it's just one online submission. There's just a section within that application where you'll fill out your first choice program information and your second choice program information, and then it will go off and be processed as needed, but you don't have to fill out 2 separate applications. I'll just make sure I mention that. But you want to make sure, because you only get 2 choices, that you actually meet the requirements to be able to apply. Because it would be a shame to pick a program and actually kind of waste your option, right? If you're not actually eligible for it, then you could have applied for something else that you were eligible for. So definitely step 1 and step 2 go together. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those admissions requirements next. So there are 3 things that you'll see here on this slide, but really there are 2 main types of admissions requirements. So there's the general admissions requirements, and then there are the degree-specific requirements. And I'm going to show you where you can actually access these pieces of information, because you might be looking at lots of different options at UBC right now. And so the section of the website I'm going to show you will definitely help you to identify what the requirements will be for you for this particular program, Applied Sciences at Okanagan. But in case you're looking at anything else, the Okanagan campus or Vancouver campus, it's all located in this same area. So I'll show you that in just a second. So you need to make sure that you meet the English language competency requirement. Now, this is typically met by students having completed the last 4 years of high school in Canada. So if that's something that you've done, don't worry, you'll meet the requirement. If it's not, there are 9 different ways that you can meet the English language competency. So don't worry, I'll show you where you can access that list. And if you have any questions about your particular situation, just reach out to me and we can discuss or how you may or may not meet those requirements on a one-on-one conversation. We also recommend that you're taking 6 grade 12 courses. So UBC, in particular, the Applied Sciences program is quite rigorous. And so taking a full course load is definitely great information for our admissions team to be able to get a sense of how you're coping with a rigorous course load in high school, and kind of get a sense of how you might be able to cope with a rigorous program like the Applied Science program at UBC. And there are, of course, those degree-specific requirements. So I'm going to walk you through that handy section of the website next. So hopefully my slide will play here, but let's see. Okay, there we go. So you.ubc.ca is the landing page for anything that's going to be most useful for you as an applicant. You're going to go to Applying to UBC, Admissions Requirements, and then Canadian High School Students. So you can see along the right-hand side that there's also some other other information that might apply to you. If you're an Indigenous student in Canada, or you've taken IB, anything like that. Now we're going to click on the Okanagan campus. We're going to pick which province it is that you've completed high school in. So for the sake of tonight, we're going to pick BC. You'll see the English language requirement there. You can click that link if you need to see those different options for the ways you can meet that. And then degree specific requirements, we're going to do that drop down option there, and you can see the applied sciences requirements are going to populate. So this will change depending on which program you've actually selected from the drop-down menu, whether you're looking at Okanagan versus Vancouver. But you can see here that these are the grade 12 requirements, but you're also going to want to make sure that you meet those general admissions requirements that are stated above. So graduating from high school, and that it's recommended that you have those 6 courses within grade 12. All right, so definitely know that you can go back to that section and have a bit of a play around, see all your different options and what those requirements are. But this is really your go-to spot for identifying those requirements. All right, so we've done step 1 and done step 2, and now the final step of course is step 3, and that's completing the online application. So there are 2 main parts to submitting an application with UBC. There is the academic profile, that's one part. So we've kind of already talked about that at this point, right? We looked at those grade 12 requirements and those general admissions requirements, things like the English language requirements. That's part of your academic profile. So that's admissions trying to get to know the academic part of you as an applicant. But there's another side of our holistic admissions process, which is the personal profile. So we're trying to get to know your academic profile, your personal profile, and we put that together to try and assess and get to know you as a whole person, as a real person, holistically, getting to know you as an applicant. Because as much as your academic information is important, and it is an important part of your application, we want to see that applicants would be able to be successful at UBC. We want to set our applicants up for success in this next step of their education, but we also want to get to know you as a real person. And I always say that you don't go around introducing yourself by your IB score or a GPA or a percentage, right? You actually have a name and you have all these interests and you have these things that make you unique, and your interests, your goals, your motivations are all going to be really individual to who you are as a person. And so this personal profile is the way that we actually get to know that person who's connected to that academic profile, but is a real person and is an interesting person we want to get to know. So this is where you're going to actually respond to some short response prompts. So you'll be answering things within a 50-word response to 200-word response. Now, all of the questions for the personal profile are always on our website in that you.ubc.ca. So if you're joining us tonight as a grade 10 student, a grade 11 student, you will be able to find those questions now, but I would recommend that you check that same section of you.ubc.ca in a year's time or 2 years' time, whatever is appropriate for your situation, to make sure that you've got the updated questions. But they're always online. They're not meant to be a secret. And there's no right or wrong answers in this section. So it's really just a chance for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, to reflect, and to really just show us some of that thoughtful reflection that you've been doing, things that you've probably been thinking to yourself or talking to friends and family about, teachers about, when you're looking at how you might respond to these questions. So definitely just be sincere. Be true to who you are, because there are no right or wrong answers in this. We're genuinely just trying to get to know you as an individual a bit better through this section of the through the section of the application. So some deadlines to keep in mind as well is that you can apply by the 1st of December to be considered for our first round of offers. So essentially, if you apply a little bit earlier, before the 1st of December, we might be able to give you an outcome of your application a little bit earlier. So the majority of our applicants actually don't receive a first round offer. So only, it changes, but I would say maybe around 15% of applicants will receive a first round offer. So do not worry if you apply by the 1st of December and you don't get a first round offer, you just stay in the applicant pool. It just means that we're gonna wait for some more academic information to be available and do another assessment once some more information comes in. And the majority of applicants do end up in that situation, so please don't panic if that happens. And we also have a couple of scholarships that you'll be able to be considered for if you apply by the 1st of December. So not only might you be able to get an earlier outcome of your application, but you're also going to automatically be considered for a Presidential Scholars Award, which is a merit-based scholarship. and possibly the Centennial Scholars Entrance Award, which is a financial need-based scholarship. Now, this one you will need to fill out some additional information for, because everyone's financial need is going to be different and very individual. So in order to assess what someone's financial need is and what would be appropriate to award someone, we would want to be able to assess that information on an individual case-by-case basis. So in order to be considered for the Centennial Scholars Entrance Award, you would need to just supply us with some additional information through another online application. And if all of that is not enough of a reason for you to apply by the 1st of December, that's absolutely fine. You can apply by the 15th of January. So that really is your final deadline. I do recommend that you do submit your application a day, maybe 2 days at the latest before that deadline, just in case, because you never know what could happen. Your browser could crash, or there is an application fee, which is $71.75 for Canadian citizens and permanent residents. And for international students, it's around $120.75. So because there is that payment part as well, it never hurts to submit it a little bit in advance, just in case there's any sort of delays or anything that's unexpected, right? Better not to cut it close if you can avoid it. All right, so that covers the admissions information for you tonight. Now I'm going to hop to this next slide here so that you can take a look and take a picture or write down that my direct email address is right there, so that if there's anything, like I said, that you want to ask about after tonight, or you want to talk about your situation one-on-one, definitely reach out to me there and I'll be able to assist you further. Now I'm going to pause for a moment here and bring up, I know there are some questions happening in the chat here. Let me make sure that I can answer, or that I'm finding the questions to be able to answer. All right, so so now is the Q&A time. I should have paused and said that. Now is the Q&A time, the last few minutes here. So definitely, if you have any questions, just pop them into that chat down below. So I've got a question that's asking about leaving both options open. I think this is in reference to applying to both the Okanagan Applied Science program as well as the Vancouver program. Can I still fill out 2 applications, one for each campus? So you don't need to do 2 separate applications. It's actually just 1 application that you'll submit. It's just 1 online application. And within it, there's a section where you're going to fill out what your first choice is and what your second choice is for a program. So you'll just need to pick which program you're going to put first as your first choice, which one's going to be your second choice, and then it goes off in the same application. But you can absolutely put the Okanagan as your first choice and then the Vancouver program as your second choice. That's absolutely possible. But as I mentioned earlier, you're just going to want to think through which program you're putting as your first choice quite carefully, because that's the one you're really going to be considered for first and foremost. And only if you were unsuccessful would you be considered for your second choice program. So just think that one through carefully. If I switch my degree from science to engineering, do I have to restart my personal profile? So I'm guessing this, and correct me, Maria, if I've misinterpreted your question. But I think you mean, so if you started in a Bachelor of Science and you wanted to transfer into the engineering program as a second-year student, with that application process, would you need to submit a personal profile? I think is what you mean. Again, correct me if I misinterpreted that, but in that case, so applying as a transfer applicant actually does not require a personal profile. So that's only part of the application for high school applicants who want to apply directly from high school to start in the Applied Sciences program. So if you're applying to transfer into the Bachelor of Applied Science from another college, another university, or another program at UBC, there is still an application process. It's still a selective process. And certainly I would encourage you to think through your options quite carefully now, because engineering can be kind of quite a hard one to transfer into. It can be quite selective. Not to say, obviously people do transfer in, so I don't want to put you off, but it can be more selective. So I would recommend thinking through carefully about which one it really is your priority at this point, and to apply for that accordingly, because it can be more selective to apply as a transfer student, but it wouldn't require a personal profile. So you would just be doing that as a high school applicant. All right, and it looks like there are no other questions coming through at this time. So as you see, Helena has popped a message into the chat there that she is ducking out. She's actually going over to the admissions booth. So if you have any other questions, or you're just sort of knowing that was a lot of information to absorb in a 30-minute period, and you're like, I need a minute before I think of my questions, just feel free to pop over there. And actually, wait, here we go. Let me see, I've just had a notification about some of the other questions. Let me make sure I didn't miss any here. There's a question about scholarships here. So if you were granted a scholarship, would it apply to whichever campus you attend? So your scholarship assessment, and if in case I didn't mention this before, your personal profile is used not only for your admissions evaluation, but also for the Presidential Scholarship and the Centennial Scholars Entrance Award assessment as well. So if you were to receive any type of scholarship, it would be based on which program you had been admitted to. So typically that's connected to your first choice program, but it will depend on exactly which scholarship you've been assessed for. But the high school applicant first year UBC related scholarships, that tends to be how it works. But if you've got a more specific question about a particular scholarship that I haven't mentioned, just feel free to let me know or let Helena know in the admissions booth, and we'll go through that in more detail. Let's have a look. So with regards to the personal profile, there is a question here about different degrees have different questions that they'll need to answer for the personal profile. That is correct. Some programs don't ask all questions. Some programs ask all questions. So you'll be able to see what all of the question possibilities are in advance, but also once you start your application and select the programs that you're applying to within the application, you'll be able to see the personal profile section as well. So you'll just have to kind of go through the page by page submission, and then you'll be able to see. The admissions booth, let me grab the link. Someone's just asking for the link for the admissions booth. I will grab that in just a moment. And with regards to scholarships for women in engineering, there is, if you go to the yu.ubc.ca website, there's actually a section called financial planning. And under that, there's a link to the scholarships that I talked about in today's session, but there's also a link to other scholarships. And you can actually filter by the type of degree you're applying for and what year study you're in, that sort of thing. So if you are looking for something specifically geared for women in engineering, you'll be able to find anything that's available within that particular page. So if you don't find that for whatever reason, Helena will definitely be able to point you in the right direction for the admissions booth here. Now, I am going to just stop sharing my screen for one moment here, just so I can grab that admissions booth link, and just bear with me here. And again, if I did not get to your question, I do apologize, and I will ensure that Helena or myself will be able to answer those questions for you in the admissions booth. So let me just grab this link here. And the chat. Sorry, I just had a bunch of things pop up on my screen here. Let me make sure that this actually goes into the chat. Oh my goodness, here we go. All right, now that should be the Zoom link for the admissions booth. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this session for high school applicants. I'll be starting a session for transfer applicants shortly. But if you have any other questions, like I said, just pop over to that admissions booth, and Helena or myself will be able to assist you from here, or be sure to email me. I'll just pop my email in the chat one more time here. And we'll go from there. All right, thanks so much for joining, everyone. I hope I'll see some of you in a few moments after my next presentation, and we'll be able to answer any other questions from here. All right, take care, everyone.